I'm Jennifer Purcell, and welcome to my podcast, Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge, where we will discuss, discover, and learn more about the challenges and triumphs of those with NLD and other learning challenges. I do have a website for this podcast, and it is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter account for the podcast. They are all under the same name, which is Living with NLD. I also have a YouTube channel for the podcast, which can be found by Googling the title of the podcast, which is Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge. I would like to tell you about a nonprofit that I use for my research for this podcast. It is called the NLD Project, and I use their blog for my research. They are a nonprofit that is based in New York and is trying to get NVLD back on the DSM, and they provide many resources for people with NVLD on their website. I'll provide you with the website for them in the podcast description. All proceeds from the ads on this podcast will be donated towards the NVLD project. Please feel free to explore the other topics on the podcast, and hopefully you will learn something new from them. I hope you enjoy today's episodes.
Also, I have podcast swag on Markful. I believe that's the name of the website I'm using now. I also have it on Redbubble. I'll give you the links in the description for this podcast episode, and you can take a look. Both websites have different prices, and they have some discounts going on also. And one has t-shirts and some apparel that you can buy and some drinkware. So see which one you would like better. This episode is going to be recorded. I was trying to record it yesterday, but it didn't save, so I'm re-recording it. Have you ever experienced relationships that seemed real in the first few moments of having it and then slowly fading into fake ones? I had this experience with a couple girlfriends, and my last romantic relationship, which ended last October, felt like that. I did an episode on ghosting, which I encourage you to listen to if you want more detail on how that affects both neurodiverse and neurotypical individuals. This episode will be hard for me to record and write, but it will help me heal and process through things more, so it's worth it. The most recent romantic relationship I had was a little longer than the first. It didn't end very well, though. At first, I thought it was going to be different than the first one I had, but I think it was very similar in some ways. Both felt more like a friends with benefits relationship than a true relationship as boyfriend-girlfriend. The first relationship I had felt more real than this second one because we both said, I love you on the same night and felt like we did love each other. But in the second one, I was the only one who verbally expressed love and didn't feel like he loved me. He only cared for me, which isn't the same as love. If you've ever been taken advantage of by men or women, you know what the difference is that I'm speaking of. I'm glad that I did end the second relationship and didn't try to have it last longer than it should, like I did with my first one. I was able to set boundaries better in this one and move more slowly than I did in the first one. The mistake I made in this relationship was thinking it could go back to feeling like a real relationship when it had already ended and been on a downhill for a while. He wanted to take a break and still see me because he wanted the sexual relationship but not the stress of boyfriend and girlfriend. He already had too much stress from work and didn't need more. I held on to the relationship for almost 2 months after that break started because I thought it would improve and return to the great, lovely relationship we both felt in the first couple months, but it never did because his feelings for me had changed. And I ended that one because, I'll make a long story short. When I had my last car accident, I was heading towards his place and I texted him and I told him what happened, but he didn't even come to see if I was okay in person. He was just texting me back and forth, which is not the right way to handle that. It would have been better to come and see how I was doing, um, and trying to, check in with me and so forth. Um, and I thought I had seen him last weekend, but it might have just been something that looked like him. But even in the moment when I thought it was him, that was kind of stressful. But at least I was out in public and he didn't see me, and my friend was able to get me out of there pretty quickly. The girlfriends that I've had before the pandemic that ghosted me didn't give me any warnings for it ending quickly. I was the one who realized it was happening. I wish that I didn't even experience those relationships, but I think they were a blessing in disguise because I learned more about the red flags of relationships than I knew before. The first article I would like to use is titled How Neurodivergent People Are Challenging Conventional Notions of Romance. It is about what can be done to move away from social constructions of good relationships and move towards something that means people can thrive. By Francisca P. This was written last November. Quote, relationships are hard, but deconstructing what we think we know and building on our definitions of relationships is the path forward. It's something queer and neurodivergent people have been doing forever. Neurodivergence is most commonly associated with neurodevelopmental conditions such as autism spectrum disorder or ADHD, but also depending on the researcher or expert you're speaking with can include mental illnesses, learning disabilities, and even brain injuries. It refers to the diversity of human neurology, said counselor Maria Milmine, specifically people who diverge from dominant societal norms. For neurodivergent people, societal norms can be harder to understand. We spend our lives mimicking and masking, trying to fit in, appearing more like an alien than a real person. After years of torsion, you might find you might fit in somewhat, but you're too fatigued to live properly, let alone thrive. Close quote. So I would say the article is good in terms of giving some context to how neurodivergence people feel with societal norms and that they try to mask and mimic a lot to fit in. But if you do that too much, then you aren't really getting the sense of who you truly are. And I think that's why it's hard to thrive in relationships when you do that. The second article is titled Navigating Authentic Connections, Neurodivergent Struggles with Inauthenticity in Friendships, by Sweet Divergence, from August of last year. Seeing through the smoke, the bullshit radar. Quote, neurodivergent individuals possess an uncanny ability to detect disingenuous behavior, which I affectionately refer to as the bullshit radar. Basically, we can sense when someone isn't being honest, even if we can't fully explain why. Essentially, it's like having a built-in authenticity detector, and it's both a blessing and a curse, dismantling the facade. Unfortunately, this issue of dishonesty further exacerbates the challenges faced by neurodivergent individuals in forming meaningful connections. Neurotypical individuals often bend the truth to avoid conflict, appear more socially acceptable, or protect their image. This contrast in communication style, where many neurodivergent individuals prioritize honesty and transparency, adds to a lack of trust and poses barriers to building authentic relationships. Close quote. So, for that article, it makes sense what the author is saying about their BS radar because um, as I think back on when people were being dishonest or hiding the truth in relationships, I can see it better now than I did when I was in the relationship. And sometimes I remember having the feeling that they were being dishonest in the relationship, but I think I ignored it because um, I wanted to trust them. I wanted to feel like it was a meaningful relationship, obviously, but realizing I shouldn't have done that now and pay more attention to the red flags. But I feel like life is a learning process and you learn as you go. So, um, yeah, it's a good thing to have those learning lessons. So the last article I want to use is from Reddit. Quote, all my relationships are fake. None of them mean anything to me. I used to really struggle socially, but after a lot of observation and practice, I can pretend my way through most situations. I move around a lot, and when I move somewhere new, I make friends, get a girlfriend, go out, etc. But I only do any of this as the sort of social camouflage. I know how to make people like me, but what's the point? When I move somewhere new, I cut all ties with the people from my old location and I feel nothing. They're not useful to me, and I don't see any other reason to maintain the relationship. I don't want to be like this. I want connection with others. I want to experience what seems to be such an important part of being a person, but I can't. I'm so used to pretending I don't even know what my real self is anymore. I tried to maintain relationships after they are no longer useful. However, I get this visceral reaction, almost like disgust, because I'm getting nothing from it. I know how toxic this sounds, but I feel like I need to be honest if I ever want something to change. Close quote. So that article reminded me of how I had continued both my first and second romantic relationships after they were declining, um, because I was still in both the relationships um, as friends with benefits after a break, basically. And I shouldn't have done that, but I'm glad that the second time I did it, it didn't, last as long as the first time. It didn't only lasted 2 months as opposed to 5 months. And I think that's because I learned how toxic it could be from the previous one and was trying to not repeat that. And I think that definitely taught me how to behave differently in relationships, and um, hopefully that will help you guys as well. Um, the ghosting episode that I did, I just want to give you a little bit of information about it. It was basically a me piecing together recordings from friends, neurotypicals and neurodivergents, of their experiences of ghosting, and me sharing my experiences of ghosting with that, and then commenting and feedback on how on my friends' experiences, basically. and online. I really liked that episode because it was kind of fun, not learning it, not hearing the ghosting experiences, but it was fun putting it together and um, asking people to contribute. And I enjoyed, um, I wouldn't say I enjoyed listening to it because you don't enjoy listening to somebody being ghost, but I did enjoy putting the episode together in terms of seeing how it came about and how it laid pretty nicely together, and how I was able to make it go together and um, flow, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Um, and in a couple of weeks, I'll repost or I'll post the second part to last week's interview. I hope that you guys got something out of that interview. I definitely did myself, and I hope to share more of that interview with you guys. So I hope that you get some more out of this episode. And as always, I'll include the links to the articles in the description. Bye. I also want to take time to let you know that this podcast is sponsored by Spotify. And if you would like to support this podcast and keep it going, you can donate through Spotify, or you can donate through Patreon, which is also a sponsor for podcasts. And on Patreon, I started to put different material up there. For $5, you can get some episodes that don't have any ads to it. And for $10, you can get the same episode along with the transcript for it, at least the link to it that is on my website. And you can listen to the episode while you read along to it. And also, BetterHelp sponsors this podcast. And BetterHelp is an online therapy program that has helped millions of people get out of whatever situation that they may be in that it requires therapy, whether that's depression or anxiety, or maybe they're going through a difficult period with being a healing from something in their past that happened. I know for myself, I've been in 8 years of therapy with a different online program than BetterHelp, but I can speak in general terms that therapy is very effective and can help you change your life around for the better. It certainly has done that for mine. And I provide all the links for these sponsorships in the podcast description if you want to check them out. Thank you.
As I wrap up, there are some things I would like to share with you. I do have a website for this podcast. It is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook and Instagram page for this podcast. It is called Living with NLD. I will include the links for those in the description. In conclusion, I would like to hear from my audience. If you know individuals with NLD that I could interview for this podcast, please email me at livingwithnld@gmail.com. What are you interested in learning about NLD? I know I'm not an expert, but I do know I have the living experience of having it. I would like you to practice journaling about your gifts and differences. Also, see if there is a way that you can make that difference become easier for you to do than it originally was. Thank you for listening today, and please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe to it. Thank you. Bye.
And today I am very excited to announce that BetterHelp is now sponsoring this podcast. I have had 7 years of therapy, so I know it can help change your life if you not only let it, but work on the personal goals that you set with your therapist. Without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy works. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need,
It's time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles and start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist. So you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's more affordable than in person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are the greatest asset. And special offering to listeners of Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/. I'll put in the link in the podcast description for you. That's BetterHelp, HELEP. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.